I'm here with Brian Flemming. I originally saw an article on him on runnersworld.com and just felt like he had a great story. And first off, Brian, thanks for the time. And maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Hi, Jason. Yeah, my name's Brian. I'm from Canton, Michigan. I'm 34 years old. I'm a music teacher by trade, and I've become an avid runner in the past couple of years, actually, and working on a fitness training certification right now currently. So my career is kind of taking a sideline and going in a different direction now, which is pretty exciting.
That's awesome. So, you're a rare breed to talk to. Would you mind sharing how much you formerly weighed and how much you've lost?
Well, at my heaviest, I was about 625 pounds, and I had a size 60 waist. I was a chronic alcoholic at the time. I drank about a fifth of vodka every single night, mixed that with soda, and I was probably consuming about 7,000 calories a day. Um, Today, I've lost 390 pounds total. This recently, I ran a full marathon in Detroit, did the International Free Press Marathon in Detroit, and my aspirations are, they have no limits right now. I don't know where I'm going to go right now, but life has been good.
Well, congratulations, and you look phenomenal. Um,
Thank you.
Maybe if you don't mind, take us
Sure.
back. Where did the weight come on for you? What was life like when you were younger? Were you always big, or was it something that came on later in life?
I'd say I started putting on weight probably around sixth grade. So when I started middle school, I know that I was bullied a lot when I was younger. I wasn't always that, overweight from a younger age. But I did start putting on weight when I got glasses and braces when I was young, and I was picked on a lot in middle school. And I remember that they started adding soda machines in the schools, and it was very easy to be able to drink soda all day long, and also eat junk food in the cafeteria every single day. So I got used to eating bad foods, and that became a part of my diet every single day. And also with the bullying, I also went through a depression, something which I didn't really quite realize until later in life. But I was dealing with depression from a young age, and the way I was dealing with that was by comfort eating, basically. So it was kind of a vicious cycle. I ate because I was depressed, and I was depressed because I ate, and in turn, my weight got worse and worse. And by the time I graduated high school, I was probably pushing 400 pounds, maybe a little bit more. And it just got worse and worse. And I know by the time I went into college, I got into drinking, and depression got worse and worse. I was suicidal at one point. I was actually hospitalized one night, put on suicide watch. Never really quite approached my depression from seeing a therapist or anything like that. I saw a social worker once. It never really worked for me. I always went right back to the drinking. Nothing really quite hit me. And I pretty much bottomed out in college. I ended up dropping out of school, working dead end jobs, here and there, just to kind of supplement my habits, my bad habits. And it took years and years to get there. It took years and years to get to that highest weight, 625 pounds. And I was borderline type 2 diabetic. I had high blood pressure. I was on three different blood pressure medications. And I had an underactive thyroid also. I took a thyroid medication every single morning as well. So my prospects were pretty bleak, and I really didn't have a whole lot to look forward to at that point. So it was a long time in getting to my worst point.
Wow. And I think I read somewhere that you said that, you would eat anything cheap and readily available. What did food look like for you at that point?
It was a lot of fast food, a lot of stuff that was, like I said, cheap, and stuff that was easily accessible, stuff that I didn't have to go out of my way to get to. So drive-throughs a lot, and just cheap calorific foods, like pizza and stuff like that, and anything that would satisfy my cravings. I really liked salty food, so I ate a lot of chips and stuff like that, French fries. And I also craved sugar, so I drank a lot of soda. I drank a lot of soda. I remember looking back, when I started losing weight, I used a calorie counter called MyFitnessPal on my phone, the free app that you use. And I kind of looked back to see what I was eating at my worst, and I had to go back and add up everything I ate throughout the day. And I totaled out one day, it was around 7,000 calories, which is an insane amount. But I realized that at that weight, I was eating enough to maintain, the weight that I was at. And out of that, 2,000 calories alone of that was just alcohol. 2,000 calories was between the fifth of vodka and the soda that I would mix with it as well. So I had some really, really bad eating habits, that's for sure.
Wow. And did you grow up in an area, whether it was your family or the people who were around you, your community? Was it a healthy community? Was it an unhealthy community? Was life was it surprising to you at all that you had gotten big and that your lifestyle was what it was?
I know the community I was in, it wasn't necessarily frowned upon to eat fast food. I was kind of raised in that generation, the 80s and 90s, where fast food wasn't really a bad thing at that point. Like people didn't realize the health complications that could be caused by eating a lot of fast food, and that became a staple of my diet. Until realize later in college, in the late 90s, early 2000s, where you realize that those foods are really, really bad. It kind of hits you then. And my family always ate relatively healthily, but I would also eat a lot of bad food when I was at school and when I was away from home. I'd have access when I was in high school. I had access to a car, and I had money in my pocket. I could eat fast food a lot on my own, not necessarily because my family encouraged bad eating. I kind of developed those habits all on my own. And I think I don't necessarily blame society or the way I was raised on that. I think a lot of things caused the bad eating habits that I had. But yeah, I don't think it helped either. Like I said, when I was in middle school, when they added the soda machines to the school, I remember they had this thing called Fruitopia back in the early 90s, and it was like it was advertised as this fruit juice. It's healthy, and it's all natural and all this stuff. And really, that stuff is just sugar water. It's water and high fructose corn syrup, and some kind of flavoring in there. And all of a sudden, everybody's putting on all this weight because they're drinking this healthy beverage. And of course, people are misled into thinking certain foods are healthy and other ones aren't. But I don't necessarily blame that on the way I turned out. It certainly didn't help, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure those new habits or the ease of acquiring those things at a young age only creates patterns and whatnot that just probably carry on as you get into college. You have more freedom. I know for me at least that was always an issue. It's like I could do whatever I want.
Right.
So 625 pounds is something that I know for myself I can't completely relate to. What were some of the struggles and what were some of your frustrations just in daily life at that weight?
Being 625, I mean, I'm lucky. The height I'm at, I'm 6'2", so I was still able to get around with a lot of difficulty. But I was able to climb a flight of stairs. I'd be completely out of breath. My heart would be beating out of my chest, but I could still get up and down stairs. I worked dead end jobs, and a lot of them were retail jobs, so I was on my feet a lot, even when I was really big. But everything took a big, big amount of effort. Like even getting out of a chair or getting in and out of my car. Like I said, walking up and down stairs took a lot of effort at that weight. Even just mundane tasks like bathing and stuff like that, and changing your clothes and all that stuff was just a big chore. It was really very, very difficult, and having that weight problem certainly didn't make things easier. And I'd say, I think it wasn't really a deterrent for me, because I was the entire time I was self-medicating, by drinking. Every single night I drank just to kind of like numb myself and kind of numb away the pain and kind of like let me forget about what my life was like. And I also took a lot of painkillers, like Advils and taking a leave all day long. So I'm sure that really didn't, do very, didn't help out my kidneys and my liver very much, as I went along. But I was in a lot of pain constantly. My feet would be in pain anytime I had to stand on my feet for any amount of time. My feet would be hurting significantly to the point where I was almost in tears just having to stand for long amounts of time. But yeah, I mean, I think that kind of added to the need for my alcoholism. Kind of added to the fact that I needed to drink to numb things and to kind of like I said, self-medicate. And that's kind of the way things went.
And then, I know that you kind of had a turnaround moment that I would love to get to in a second, but along the way throughout that, had you made any attempts at any point to lose weight, or was that even a thought in your mind?
Uh, I tried a couple of diets along the way. I tried some crash diets. I tried Atkins once. I tried to give up carbohydrates entirely. I tried South Beach once, which is kind of like Atkins, but it's low fat proteins and stuff. And none of them really worked for me. A lot of them just seemed like I was depriving myself, like I wasn't getting enough calories. I felt like I was constantly hungry. Nothing really seemed to work for me. But I honestly I didn't really give them a serious try. I mean, looking at them today, if I had really tried those, I might have lost weight. I don't know for sure if I'd really given it a serious try, but at the level of depression that I was at, and just how self-absorbed I wasn't convinced that I would ever be able to lose weight. That I was pretty much doomed. I was pretty much just stuck at the way I was. And that's the way things were. That wasn't going to change, and that was the way my mindset was, and there was no way out of it. So when it came to dieting, I never really tried to do it. You know.
So I know that you did kind of have a turnaround moment that I kind of heard you talk about in your videos and whatnot. Would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, sure. At my biggest, I was a bit of a gamer. I played a lot of video games. I played games on my tablet, like Words with Friends and things like that. I started playing this game called Draw Something, and it's kind of like Pictionary, where you take turns drawing a picture, it goes back and forth. You have to guess what the other person draws, and you get matched up with random people online when you start a game. So I got matched up with this woman in London, England. Her name is Jackie, and we started playing this game. And she was really good at it at first. Actually, she would paint things like the Eiffel Tower, paint things like the Mona Lisa and stuff like that. And I drew stick figures. I was awful at it. I never was a good drawer. I just kind of played it because it was fun and it was a novelty to me. So she would ridicule me. She'd kind of make fun of me, and like in a lighthearted way, like we would kind of joke about it. And we kind of went back and forth and kind of developed this relationship, just through chatting over a video game. And when we played this game, you could only send a single line of text across, so we really couldn't say much. Each time we took a turn, you really could only say, maybe a dozen words or so before you had to, switch over to the next person. So we eventually ended up adding each other on social media, on Facebook, and chatting on there. And even at first, I didn't tell her how big I was. I was kind of afraid. Now that I had this new friend, that was halfway around the world, I didn't want to scare her off, and say, hey, I'm an alcoholic. I'm 600 pounds. I didn't want to overload her with that. I thought I would, freak her out. So we kind of went along for a while where I'd only show her pictures from my neck up. I wouldn't show her how big I was. She knew I was overweight, but she didn't know how overweight I was. And then one day I kind of bottomed out. My depression was really, affecting me. And I felt like giving up on everything, basically. So I just went for broke. I went, told her, I spilled my guts and said, hey, I'm drinking a fifth of vodka every night. I'm 600 pounds. I feel like killing myself. I feel like I'm totally worthless, waste of space. And I don't know what I'm doing here. And I was expecting her to, sympathize with me and say, oh, that's too bad, blah, blah, blah. Pat me on the back, whatever it takes. And I got quite the opposite. And that's something I don't really don't say out loud, but she cussed me out. Basically, she yelled at me, she berated me, she got angry with me. She used some really colorful language. It's kind of interesting. But I can't say the one thing she did say. This is kind of a British term, but she said, "You're pissing your life up the wall," is what she told me. She basically just said, that, hey, there's people out there fighting for their lives. There's people out there that have, terminal illnesses that would kill to, have the opportunity to stay alive. And here's you, otherwise I'm healthy, throwing my life away. I have all these chances. I went to college. I had an education, all this stuff, completely throwing it away. And, she said, what are you doing? Basically. And it was shortly before this point too, she told me that, she has this illness called myotonic dystrophy. It's a form of muscular dystrophy, and over time, the muscles in your body degrade because the electrical signals sent from your brain kind of degrade over time. So, in her case, with her illness like this, she was in a unique position to kind of tell me, get off your butt and do something. So it was. I think I needed to hear that from her. I needed to hear it from somebody who doesn't take life for granted. Doesn't take her health for granted, really. And just hearing that, was kind of the kickstart I needed. So that night, I actually know the night, that was October 13th, 2012. I quit drinking cold turkey, and I stopped drinking the alcohol. I cut it out entirely. I still ate all the fast food. I still ate all the junk food at first, but I cut out alcohol, and that was the biggest thing for me. That was the biggest step, health wise for me that I could have taken at that point. And I remember telling her that night, I said, "Hey, I'm not drinking tonight." And she kind of got angry with me and said, "Yeah, right. I don't believe you." And the next day I woke up again. I said, "The next day, this is day two. No alcohol." And she's like, "Yeah, right." And then she was still angry with me. It took a while for her to warm back up to me again. But I know after a couple of days, she started talking to me again, and then we kind of developed, a different kind of relationship with a different dynamic at that point. Um, but yeah, I mean, that was the kind of this spark, the inspiration that got me going was just a stranger, 3,500 miles away, kicking my butt. That really got me to make a serious change.
Wow, that's awesome. So, I know for a lot of bigger people, myself included, anytime anybody would kind of, and I know, you said you were kind of at the bottom, so maybe it's a little different, but anytime anybody would, make any comment, look at me a certain way, anything, I was hyper sensitive to everything. So
Mhm.
when, somebody tells you that, you're pissing your life up a wall amongst everything else, what was your initial reaction to that?
Anger. I got angry back, and I think that was exactly what I needed because instead of feeling sorry for myself, I got angry at her. I got angry at myself. I got frustrated. And I think I used that anger and kind of, instead of thinking, oh man, I'm angry at myself, there's nothing I can do, was how am I going to prove her wrong? How can I say, okay, I'm not this bad person that you're saying I am. I'm better than that. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was kind of what got me going. I think that's what motivated me to say, okay, I'm going to quit drinking, not because, um, well, one, because it was healthy, but also because I just wanted to say, hey, I can do this. I am, there's no reason why I can't do this. There's people out there that go through a lot worse things than I have. It's funny, there was a story of this mountain climber in Utah that I kind of used as inspiration as I went along as well. This guy named Aaron Ralston. I don't know if you're familiar with his story. But they made a movie about it too. But he was a canyoneer. He climbed in these canyons in Utah, fell down, a rock came down, pinned his arm between a wall and a boulder, basically, and he was stuck there for like 5 days, and he couldn't get out. And he realized that nobody was coming to save him. It was either he had to do something or he was going to starve to death and not get out of that canyon. And this guy ended up cutting his arm off and crawling back, 14 miles to find, somebody to help him, get on a helicopter and get out to, civilization. And it came down to this guy having to decide whether to either cut off his arm or stay there and die. And that was his choice. And for me, that was very, very, it was kind of like cathartic just to see something like that, to see that it really comes down to a choice. You do something or you die. That's your two options. You either make a healthy choice or you keep going down that road, and I wouldn't be alive very much longer. So I think also seeing what the extent of a human can do to survive. To see this guy cut off his arm to live, I can lose some weight. That's doable. It kind of puts things into perspective. But stuff like that's always kind of fascinated me, just to see what people are willing to do, what people are capable of doing. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, it almost sounds to me in that story like you went from seeing yourself as a victim to no longer seeing yourself as a victim.
Yeah, I'd say instead of blaming the world for my problems, I finally took ownership of it and did something about it. Instead of just blaming everything on external issues. I'm depressed because I got bullied. I'm drinking because I'm depressed. Blah blah blah. No, it really came down to a choice. It's either I can drink or I can not drink, and I decided not to, and I decided to do something about it. And yeah, I think really taking responsibility for your own actions is a real big part of it. I think that's something that was a big step for me, definitely.
Wow. So I know October 13th, you said that was kind of the defining day. I think, saw that maybe you had either been an alcoholic or dealt with alcohol since the age of 21. So it sounds like you had gone a long time with alcohol being a pretty big presence in your life. What did the first days look like after that? And just physically and emotionally. when something that had been so present for so long was all of a sudden just gone.
It was tough. This is something, and this people that have approached me after the fact too have asked me, what did you do to quit drinking? How did you get over it? That's a real common question, and that's something that the way I quit doing it cold turkey was pretty risky actually. And from what I understand, that withdrawal symptoms could be life threatening in some cases. For somebody like me, I'd been drinking the better part of a decade, and it had become so ingrained into my habits, my daily routine that cutting it out was huge for me. It was a big struggle. I had cold sweats. My hand would shake a lot. My hand would be very twitchy. I couldn't sleep at night, and sometimes when I did sleep, I'd sleep 14 hours. Emotionally, it was like a roller coaster, would go up and down. It was a struggle. I'd say the first week to almost 2 weeks was really difficult for me. But once I got through that, it was almost like a weight got lifted off my shoulders, and all of a sudden, I wasn't bogged down by having alcohol just kind of rule my life. My life was centered around, okay, when's the next time I can drink? When's the next time I can get back and, get back to my drinking routine? But instead that was gone. And now all of a sudden, all these opportunities started opening up, and now I could do all these different things. And then it became like a snowball effect. So once I quit the drinking, that kind of settled in. Became the new normal for me, without drinking. Then I kind of realized, hey, I'm still eating all this junk food. I'm still drinking soda. Why am I still doing this? Like I quit drinking, but I'm still killing myself with this fast food. It seemed almost like hypocritical. Like, why would I quit drinking and still keep eating, McDonald's every day? So I decided to gradually start cutting back on different things. So I didn't want to go cold turkey on the fast food. I knew that might be a little too much for me. So I started eating healthier versions of food. So like I would go to, say, Taco Bell, and I would order, my normal tacos that I would get, but I would get them without the cheese. I would get like a slightly healthier version of certain foods that I really like to eat. And then I gradually just started, narrowing it down to healthier and healthier versions of foods. And then I got to a point where I decided to check out my portion sizes and actually see how much I was eating. And that's when I got into calorie counting and actually got an app and started tracking my portion sizes, started to see what I was eating on a daily basis, and then tried to give myself a budget to work with and kind of, figure out how things went along the way. I never really studied nutrition. I never really looked into that kind of stuff. I kind of learned as I went along. I kind of learned which foods filled me up, which foods didn't, and why that was. I think one of my favorite analogies is saying, you get 2 slices of bread or a chicken breast, and they roughly have the same amount of calories. The bread is going to taste good. It's going to fill you up for, half an hour, but then you're going to be hungry again right away. The chicken breast, that's going to fill you up. It's going to last longer, and because of the protein, it's better for you. And I kind of learned, through budgeting myself with calories, which foods were better, which foods were worse. And then kind of read about it, educated myself as I went along.
Awesome. And then I think I saw that you said that you started out just by walking in place within your own house. Where did the idea for that come from, or how did that kind of develop?
Well, it's funny when I was talking to Jackie, it was all about like, well, first of all, it was the portion controls. I mean, getting my eating under control was the biggest thing. And, she would say, oh, you Americans eat so much food, your portions are massive, blah, blah, blah. So that was a big thing, was portion control. But then she also told me that I would take to exercise like a fish to water. And that's something that blew my mind, because I never enjoyed exercise. I always hated it when I was a kid. I was always the last kid picked to dodgeball, in gym class when I was a kid. I could never run. I never ran a mile when I was a kid. I could never do it. I always struggled. I always breathed hard. Even when I wasn't overweight, I was never athletic. But I knew that I needed to do something. I knew that I needed to move. And at the weight that I was kind of afraid to go outside to go walking. I didn't want to walk in front of people. I didn't want people to watch me. I was very self-conscious about it. So I decided to walk in place, and that's all I knew what to do. All I knew was that I just needed to kind of move, and I wasn't into aerobics or anything, but I just march in place. I turn on the TV. I do my normal routine where I turn on, Netflix or whatever first thing in the morning and watch my TV show or whatever, and I'd walk in place. And that became my routine, was instead of sitting on the couch and watching the TV, I would stand up and I would walk in place. And the first day I did it, I just walked for 5 minutes, and I knew I was kind of winded at the end of that. I was I knew I pushed myself a little bit, but it wasn't too much. But I walked the 5 minutes, and I woke up the next day. I did the exact same thing. I didn't follow any kind of routine. I didn't follow any kind of workout plan. I just knew that I wanted to walk that 5 minutes, and that would be my exercise for the day. So every morning I'd wake up and I'd walk 5 minutes, and then after a few days I look at the clock and I said, okay, I could do 6 minutes. So I bump it up to 6 minutes, and then 7 minutes, and then 8 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then gradually over time, it increased. I got up to half an hour. At one point I was walking an hour at a time. I wake up first thing in the morning. I'd woke up early enough to, get in my hour of walking. I turn on Netflix. I got hooked on a TV show. I was watching, I think, House at the time. I got hooked on it, so I watched my episode of House, and I'd walk in place the whole time. It's a great show, by the way. I love that show. Yeah, that was my routine. It became a routine. And at one point, it wasn't exercise anymore. It was just what I did. I just wake up and I would walk, and I wouldn't think of it as exercise. I just think of it as what I did in the morning. That's just the first, it's like brushing your teeth. You wake up, you brush your teeth. You don't think about it. It just becomes a habit. So that's kind of what happened to me. And then eventually I decided to walk outside. And at first, like I said, I was self-conscious about my neighbors seeing me. So I would walk outside at night. I would walk outside before, after the sun was down. Just walked down a few houses and came back. I couldn't go that far. It was still a struggle for me. But then eventually I walked down another house, and then walked down another house, walked down a little bit farther every time, until I got to my first mile. That blew my mind when I walked a mile. I think it took me like 28 minutes or something like that. The first time I did that, it was like this milestone that I had. I knew that I was onto something. I knew that I kind of cracked the code. Figured out what worked for me. Walking was my thing. Walking was enough exercise for me that I knew that I was, kind of breaking a sweat, and it wasn't too hard on my knees. I knew I could pop in my headphones, and it would kind of be me time. I'd enjoy it. At one point I kept gradually increasing. Eventually I got to 5 miles. I was walking 5 miles every single morning. It took me an hour and a half, and at that point I had gotten an office job. I was working at 8 a.m. I was getting up at 5 a.m. so I could get my hour and a half walk in, so I could come back, shower, eat breakfast, and go to work. It was great. I lost a ton of weight just by walking, and eventually I started adding on cycling, and then running is a whole other story. Eventually I got into running, and that was a little bit farther down the road. But yeah, the weight was flying off of me. I know that I lost nearly 100 pounds in the first 3 months. I was losing about a pound a day at one point. And a lot of that was water weight. I look back at it, the amount of sodium that was in my diet, cutting out a lot of the salt. I was afraid of having high blood pressure, so I started cutting back on my sodium. Because of my diabetes runs on my dad's side of the family. I was borderline type 2 diabetic, so I cut out a lot of processed sugar out. For an entire year, I cut out processed sugar. And for me, that was pretty extreme, actually. That was a challenge. But cutting out the processed sugar was huge for me. I know that after cutting out processed sugar for a long time, the first time I had a banana after a couple of months, it was like a dessert. It was amazing. It was like the most decadent, amazing, sweet thing I'd had in my life was this banana. It blew my mind. But processed sugar was a big thing, and eventually I incorporated it back into my diet. I didn't keep it out entirely. But yeah, it was a process, and I kind of learned as I went along. I read about things and kind of educated myself, and I had Jackie there the whole time to kind of motivate me and kick my butt. I'd be out talking to her while I was walking, and I had my phone out in front of me, chatting to her in the dark, walking at 5 a.m. because London was 5 hours ahead of me. So she'd be, just starting her day at work, and I'd be just getting up early to go for my walk, and we kind of chat for a little bit while, I was walking out in the neighborhood, and it became a routine for me. So.
Wow. And then, I know obviously sounds like you're off to an amazing start. You still had a ways to go. How did you keep yourself motivated throughout? What was it, what did you do to keep you looking forward and not look at, how far you still had to go?
It was a mixture of things. I know I did start tracking my weight. I know that was a big thing that motivated me, actually seeing that number come down. I wasn't able to fit on a scale for the longest time, being over 600 pounds. It was almost impossible to find a scale that I could use. The only time I was actually weighed was when I was in the hospital at one point before I quit drinking, before I even met Jackie. I was hospitalized with cellulitis. I had infections in my legs, cellulitis infections, and they actually had to roll a special scale into the room so I could weigh myself. And I remember when I saw that number, it wasn't very motivating. But when I started losing the weight, the only thing that I knew that was working was that my belt was getting looser on me. I knew that my pants were getting looser. I didn't know exactly how much weight I had lost. I just know that I knew that I was going down a pant size or whatever. So eventually, I went on Amazon. I ordered a scale that went up to 550, and the first time I weighed myself on there, I was around, I think, 5'10", and I lost over 100 pounds, before I even weighed myself. And I looked back and I saw, well, I started just over 3 months ago. I lost roughly a pound a day at that point. So from that point on, I knew that I was, on the right track. I knew I was doing the right thing. And I started getting, I got these sticky notes, and I basically, every single day, I weighed myself every morning. And I basically saw the number go down. Some days it would stay the same. Some days it would go down. Some days it would stay the same. Some days it would go up a little bit. But I could see that number going down. And I weighed myself every day for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 months, I want to say. It was a long time of waking up and weighing myself. And it was great because I'd make a chart. I could actually see the gradual line going down, and just having that visual reminder to see how much progress I had made was great. And then also seeing the belt loops, changing every time I'd put my belt on, I would have to kind of move it up another notch, and it got to one point where I ran out of notches on my belt. I had to cut notches on my belt. I actually would take a little knife and I would cut holes in my belt. And I would actually get to the point where, my belt started getting too heavy. I started pulling my pants down. So I actually had to buy a new belt at one point, but I still have that old belt. Actually, I don't have it with me right now, but it's kind of cool to look back and see where I came from. That belt probably wraps around me twice now. But yeah, I think that and a combination of just consistency, having the good habits, starting out small, walking the 5 minutes, up until the point where I was walking 5 miles every day. I think it was that daily thing, just having that as a habit every single day. That's what kept me going. And it was hard to stop. Once I had walked 100 days straight, it was hard to take a day off. It was hard to say, okay, I'm going to not do my routine. It's like, no, I'm at 100 days. I'm going for 200 now. It was kind of like playing a little game with myself. And that's what kind of kept me going the whole time. That and having Jackie there to kick my butt, and kind of cheer me on. She was great. She was a huge, huge support to me.
That's awesome. So I think I read that you lost 390 pounds and it was over 18 months. Is that right?
Yeah, the total time, I think, well, 383 pounds I lost in 18 months. It was 383 pounds. And it was crazy. I ended up going over to meet Jackie. We had decided to meet at one point, and she was going to come to here to Michigan to meet me. And we were like, no. Why don't I go over there and see her instead? And so that was my goal, was to be able to fit into a plane seat. So my goal was to get down to 270 and actually get on a plane and go over there and see her in London, England. So yeah, that was my goal. And then after about 18 months, I was able to, get into that plane seat. I flew over to London to meet her, which was kind of interesting because, I forgot to sign my passport when I was leaving here from Detroit. And, when I flew out, the only other ID I had was my old driver's license. So, I had to show them my license, and they didn't believe it was me. The guy at the TSA line or whatever said, "Oh, that's like, yeah, well, this is not you." But they have this computer software where they scan your picture into the computer, and it takes a look at the distance between your eyeballs, apparently. So it still showed that it was me through the computer, even though the picture looked nothing like me. So they still ended up letting me through. I had to tell them my whole story and everything. The TSA guys were all getting kind of a kick out of it, but. Anyways, yeah, I went over and met Jackie, had the time of my life. It was great. Spent 2 weeks over there. We took a train to Paris, climbed the Eiffel Tower. It was a blast. I got to take in some British culture and see what the portion sizes were like over there. And yeah, I mean, since then I came back. I've been over there a few times now. Jackie's been here to Michigan. And we're still, best of friends to this day. We still chat a lot. We still, have our Skype calls here and there. But yeah, I mean, since then, I got back and I wrote a little blog about it on MyFitnessPal on one of those websites, and it kind of blew up, and we ended up doing, CNN got a hold of it, and it was just crazy for a while. I ended up doing talk shows. It was a crazy couple of years. I mean, I'm an introvert. It's a struggle for me to kind of get in front of people and be social. So doing all this stuff was way, way out of my comfort zone. But for a couple of years there, it was pretty exciting for me.
Wow, that's awesome. So, I know it's been a little bit, but what about this journey, whether it's today or kind of throughout, what has surprised you about life now versus life before?
I'd say just having the possibilities, just being open to things now. When I was really big, my scope was really narrow. I used to be afraid about what restaurants I would go out to eat at because I wouldn't know if I could fit in the chairs or not. And now there's very few things that I can't do right now. I want to go skydiving. I want to go bungee jumping. I want to go mountain climbing. There's all these crazy things I want to do now that weren't possible for me when I was at that weight. So now it's really exciting to kind of know that I really can do whatever I want. If I take the time to get to, to learn how to do something or figure something out or save up the money to go travel somewhere, really anything is possible. And that's really, I think, the biggest change, not just being healthy now. I'm off all my medications. I, don't take a blood pressure medication. No diabetes medications. All I take is a multivitamin and fish oil now, just to be kind of redundant. But yeah, I think the possibilities are great, and I think that was very eye opening. That's what changed the most, and it's been crazy since I got into running. At one point, I did one of those Couch to 5K apps and started using Runkeeper to track all my runs. Now I'm hooked on running. I never would have imagined it, but I run 5 days a week. I trained. I did the Detroit Marathon this past October. I'm planning on doing a marathon in Toronto in May. My goal is someday to do an Ironman. I would love to do an Ironman. I'm big into cycling too. I do a lot of cycling. I'm just really bad at swimming. I need to suck it up and get into a pool and learn how to swim because I'm really pretty bad at that right now. But that's my goal. And then I don't know, when I do an Ironman, who knows? Who knows where I'll go from there? See what the next step is. But yeah, I'm just going to keep pushing. I just want to see what my body's capable of. I've come this far, and I want to see what I want to do. I was invited to go on American Ninja Warrior at one point, and I told him I'm not an ex-Olympian. I'm not I'm not a gymnast or anything. I'm like, it's like, oh, we're looking for normal people. I said, well, I don't know. Give me a couple of years. We'll see. I got to work on my upper body a little bit, but yeah, who knows? Who knows what's possible? But I'm just gonna keep pushing, keep striving. Keep giving myself goals.
That's awesome. I saw in a video that you said that at some point you realize it's never too late to turn it around. Is that different than, what you had believed 10 or so years ago?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say 10 years ago, I'd completely given up. I had no prospects. I had no options. I knew that I wasn't going anywhere. And I knew that, well, for me, that's what I knew. I didn't know that I could actually lose weight. I didn't know that I could quit drinking. For me, I had no power over that stuff. So, when I finally decided to make a change, it was small, gradual things that really got me to where I was. But, I think, I don't know. It's tough looking back. It's trying to put myself in those shoes, trying to be where I was, at that point. And life has changed so much to this point right now where I'm at that I struggle actually putting myself back in that mindset. And, to this day, I still struggle with depression here and there. It's still something that never really entirely goes away. I still have down days here and there. And I know that exercise, getting the endorphins from that really kind of keeps me balanced and keeps me going. But yeah, I mean, it's never really, there's never really an end game for me. There's never really, okay, I'm done. It's a process. That's something I've always considered from the start is that, yeah, I'm going to have goals. Yeah, I'm going to have things I want to do, but it's never going to end. I still struggle with eating sometimes. I still struggle with portion control sometimes. And that's just part of the process. That's life. That's it's not like, oh, you get to this bottom weight where you're at and then all of a sudden you're done. You eat pizza the rest of your life, celebrate. No. You got to keep going and you got to keep giving yourself goals, and it's been great being able to give back to people, such as, you're reaching out to people with weight loss stories and stuff. Jackie and I started a support group. We called it Team 383. And people started calling that after I lost 383 pounds. We have 14,000 members now, from around the world. And we just had people that help share their own weight loss stories. And they kind of help perpetuate, and help share their stories with other people and inspire others to lose weight. And it's kind of become this whole culture of supportiveness. Like for me, I got the support from a stranger halfway around the world, and that's what kind of got me going. Now we're kind of, trying to help other people with a support structure of their own and trying to help people, push them in the right direction, kind of like how I was pushed. So it's been great to be able to give back to people and kind of help out. So,
That's outstanding. Well, if you could have a conversation, it sounds like you probably do often, with somebody who's at the beginning of this journey who, is kind of looking at where they're at and not sure if they can turn it around, and is looking for some words of encouragement or inspiration. What would you tell that person?
I'd say it is possible. It is absolutely possible. Don't ever say that something can't be done. You see people that have, illnesses, that have, predispositions that they have these hard times. And you see people doing marathons, with pedal cycles and stuff. And you see unbelievable things that humans are capable of. And when it comes to losing weight, it really comes down to a choice. You do it or you don't. And it's tough. There's not really a gray area there. I think the biggest thing is to decide to do it. You have to decide, you have to say, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to do something about this. That's the biggest thing, is being able to do that. And once you make that change, or once you make the decision to make that change, everything else becomes a little bit easier. It's either yes or no, I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do it. And then the biggest thing is gradual change, making small things, doing one thing at a time and kind of making that part of your habit. Like if you're going to make a change to your diet, or if you're going to make a change to your routine, ask yourself, can I do this the rest of my life? And if the answer is no, then it's a means to an end, and that it's not sustainable and it's not the way to approach it. And I think that's kind of one big thing that I tell a lot of people when they're just starting out, is that you need to know the reasons why you're doing it. Are you doing it just to fit into that bathing suit to, look good for the beach, or are you doing it for health reasons? Are you doing it for your kids? What's your motivation? And it's really good to kind of take a step back and see, what's really going to keep you going, what's going to motivate you, and what's going to go, have you going for the long term, for the long haul, for life, and Jackie's always said, this is one of her favorite sayings, is that, we only get this one life. There's no dress rehearsal. There's no do-overs, so if you're going to do it, you better do it right. You better do it the first time, and it's not like you're going to get other opportunities. I mean, if you're going to make a change, do it now. Don't wait for New Year's. Don't do the New Year's resolution. Like why wait? And just get down to doing it right away.
That's all great advice. Yeah. And then I know you said it yourself. It's sometimes hard to get in that mindset. But if you could go back in time 10 years or 5 years or however many years ago and have a conversation with your former self, is there anything that you would go back and say to that person, or is there anything that you think you could have said at an earlier time that maybe would have gotten you started on this journey earlier?
I would say don't give up. I would say that there's always possibilities. There's no reason not to, just throw in the towel. I think when I was at that lowest point, I had no prospects, to the point where I was so self-absorbed I couldn't see past my own nose. I couldn't see the possibilities. I couldn't see that, I could, get on a plane and fly to London someday. That wasn't an option for me, when I was that big. So I think just to say that anything is possible, not just weight loss, but getting healthy, doing the things you want to do. It's all possible. You got to put in the work. You got to do it. But it is possible. It's not something that you can say, okay, I give up. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to do this. No, that's not the case. And I think if I could kick myself in the butt when I was that big, I wish I could have. But here's the thing: I don't regret going through that phase of my life either. I think we are the sum of our parts. We go through these certain things to kind of make us who we are today. And I look back at that, and I used to regret it for the longest time. I used to say I missed out on a decade of my life. I feel like I wish I could take back those years and go back to college, finish my degree. And I wish there was some alternate universe where I was off doing something right now, if I had been successful. But no, I think going through that is what I needed to go through. Going through that is what I needed to have that epiphany to, bring me to where I am today. And if I hadn't gone through that, then I don't know where I'd be today. But I think, for better or for worse, I'm glad I went through what I did.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got at least 14,000 people and more that are probably thankful to be able to know your story.
Definitely. Yeah, the members of Team 383, I mean, they inspire me now. It's the other way around. They kind of keep me going. I see these stories every single day, and it's just amazing to see other people go through the similar, same struggles. Some people that have, conquered their own weight loss issues, and people that have, gone through amazing things, and just to see, these people support other people, it's been an amazing process, an amazing experience.
That's awesome. Well, lastly, where can people connect with you and find out about what you have going on?
Well, I do have a website, team383.com. So that's team383.com. But I also, we're based on Facebook mostly. A lot of our connections are through Facebook. So you can look me up on Facebook under Brian Flemming. And also, the Team 383 on Facebook is the best way to look us up. And we have a support group, which has been great. Jackie and I have been able to reach out to a lot of people. We have meetings here in Michigan. We've had meetings in London. We're hoping to have our own 5K at some point. We'd love to organize a 5K here in Michigan and, get some walkers and runners together and, kind of start like a healthy tradition and, see where it goes, see how many people we can help. It's been very, very gratifying. It's been a great experience.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks for the time. You're an inspiration. If there's anybody I've talked to who is a testament to anything is possible, it is certainly you. And you look phenomenal. Congratulations on the marathon. And I'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.